My name is Grace. I am 23 years old, and I live in a quiet cottage near the ocean. I looked across the heavy wooden table at the two people who gave me life, and then threw me away. My mother smoothed her silk scarf, and my father checked his expensive watch. They were smiling at me. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile you give a child who doesn't understand how the real world works. To them, I was still the fragile girl they kicked out on her 18th birthday with nothing but a suitcase and a lot of fear. They thought I was sitting here because I was desperate. They thought I was weak. Today was the final reading regarding my grandfather's estate. The number was staggering, $3.8 billion. I could see the greed in their eyes. They were already spending the money in their heads. They assumed they would be the ones to manage it. After all, they had spent years telling everyone I was unfit and too emotional to handle anything important. But as the attorney cleared his throat to speak, I didn't feel afraid. I felt a strange, cold calm. My parents thought they were looking at a victim. They had no idea that Grandpa William had left a final instruction that would change everything. They thought they were here to collect a fortune. They didn't know they were actually here to lose it all. But before I tell you how everything flipped, like and subscribe, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? My name is Grace. I am 23 years old. I learned very early that in my house, love wasn't free. It was something you had to buy, but I never had the right currency. My parents, Richard and Alina, were people who loved success. They loved things they could show off to their friends at the country club. They loved things that looked good on a holiday card. My brother, Daniel, was one of those things. I was not. The difference between us was clear before we were even teenagers. Daniel was loud. He was confident. If he walked into a room, he demanded attention, and my parents gave it to him gladly. If he drew a picture, my mother would frame it and put it in the hallway. She would tell everyone, "Look at the bold lines. He has such a vision." If I drew a picture, she would glance at it while checking her emails on her phone. "That's nice, Grace," she would say, her voice flat. "But maybe you should spend more time on your math homework. Art doesn't pay the bills." It wasn't just about art or math. It was about who we were. I remember one specific Tuesday when I was 12. It was raining hard. I had come home from school with a fever. I felt terrible. My head was pounding and I was shivering. I walked into the kitchen looking for my mother. She was on the phone, laughing. Daniel was sitting at the counter, eating a sandwich. He had just failed a history test. I saw the paper on the counter with a big red F on it. "It's the teacher's fault," Daniel was saying, his mouth full. "He asks questions about things we didn't even read." My mother hung up the phone and looked at him with sympathy. "I know, honey. Mr. Henderson is too rigid. I'll send an email to the principal tomorrow. We can't have your GPA suffering because a teacher doesn't know how to do his job. Do you want some ice cream to feel better?" Then she looked at me. I was leaning against the doorframe, sweating and pale. "Grace, why are you standing there like that?" she asked. Her tone wasn't worried, it was annoyed. "I don't feel well," I whispered. She sighed. It was a long, loud sigh. "Honestly, Grace, you are always not feeling well. You're so fragile. It's just a little rain. Go upstairs and lie down. And don't get Daniel sick. He has soccer practice tomorrow." That was the dynamic. Daniel's failure was someone else's fault. My sickness was an inconvenience. As we got older, the gap became financial. It wasn't just affection anymore, it was money. When Daniel turned 16, my parents bought him a brand new sports car. It was black, shiny, and loud. They put a big red bow on it and took 100 photos for Facebook. "Our boy is hitting the road," my dad captioned it. 2 months later, Daniel crashed it. He was driving too fast and hit a mailbox and a fence. I watched from my bedroom window as my dad inspected the damage. I expected him to be furious. I expected him to yell. Instead, he slapped Daniel on the back. "It happens, son," Dad said. "Cars can be replaced. At least you were driving aggressively. That shows leadership. We'll get you a better one." A year later, I turned 16. There was no car, there was no party. "We think it's better if you focus on your studies," my dad told me at dinner. "You get distracted easily, Grace. A car would just be a temptation to waste time. Besides, the bus is safe." I didn't argue. I learned not to argue. Arguing just made them call me emotional. In their eyes, I was a bad investment. I was quiet. I liked to read. I volunteered at the animal shelter. I didn't care about status or networking. To Richard and Alina, this meant I was defective. They called it uneconomical. "You have no drive," my mother would tell me while I washed the dishes, a chore Daniel never had to do. "You're too soft. The world is going to eat you alive, Grace, and don't expect us to bail you out when it does. They were preparing me for failure. They wanted me to fail so they could be right. They wanted to point at me and say, "See, we told you she was weak." But I wasn't weak. I was just invisible, and being invisible gave me a lot of time to watch and a lot of time to hurt. The morning of my 18th birthday was a Tuesday. I woke up with a small knot of hope in my stomach. I knew better, but I still hoped. Maybe today would be different. 18 is a big number. It's the start of adulthood. I walked downstairs. The house was quiet. My parents were sitting at the dining table. It wasn't set for breakfast. There were no pancakes, no balloons, no presents. Instead, there was a folder. My father was wearing his business suit. My mother was dressed for a charity luncheon. They looked like they were about to conduct a merger, not wish their daughter a happy birthday. "Sit down, Grace," my father said. He didn't look up from his tablet. I sat. The chair felt cold and hard. "Happy birthday," my mother said, but she said it the way you say good morning to a stranger in an elevator. Polite but empty. "Thank you," I said. My father pushed the folder toward me. "You're 18 now. According to the law, you are an adult." "Yes," I said. "We have raised you," he continued. "We have provided food, shelter, and clothing. We have done our job. But as we have told you many times, we don't believe in supporting adults who don't show promise." I froze. "What do you mean?" "We mean that as of today, our financial obligation to you ends," my mother said. She took a sip of her coffee. "We're cutting you off, Grace." I looked from one to the other. I tried to laugh, thinking it was a joke. "Okay, but I'm still in high school. I have 3 months until graduation." "That's your problem to solve," Dad said. "We are done funding your lack of ambition. We've seen your grades. They're fine, but they aren't stellar. You don't have a business plan. You don't have a vision. We aren't going to pour money into a sinking ship." "Where am I supposed to go?" I asked. My voice started to shake. "You're smart enough to figure it out," Mom said. "Or maybe you aren't. This is your test. Sink or swim." "But what about Daniel?" I asked. I couldn't help it. "Daniel is 20. He's in college. You pay for his apartment. You pay for his tuition. You give him an allowance." My father slammed his hand on the table. The sound echoed in the big, empty room. "Do not compare yourself to your brother," he shouted. "Daniel is building a future. Daniel is making connections. He is an investment. You are just existing." "We've packed a bag for you," my mother added calmly. She pointed to the hallway. There was one suitcase standing by the door. It was my old suitcase, the one with the broken zipper. "You have an hour to collect anything else you need," she said. "We're changing the locks at noon." I stared at them. They weren't angry. They weren't sad. They were indifferent. To them, this was just a business decision. They were cutting overhead costs. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I think I was in shock. I went upstairs to my room. I packed my clothes. I packed my books. I took the photo of my grandmother, my mom's mom, who had died years ago. I left everything else. When I walked out the front door, neither of them came to say goodbye. I heard the TV turn on in the den. They were already moving on with their day. I had $75 in my pocket from babysitting. I had nowhere to go. I called my friend Sarah. I was crying so hard I could barely speak. Sarah's mom let me sleep on their couch. I stayed there for 3 weeks. I got a job at a diner washing dishes. Then I got a second job cleaning offices at night. I finished high school while working 40 hours a week. I was tired all the time. My hands were chapped from the dishwater. My back ached from scrubbing floors. Meanwhile, I saw photos on Instagram. Daniel was on spring break in Cabo. My parents had paid for the trip. He was holding a drink, laughing, surrounded by friends. I was eating instant noodles and sleeping on a couch, wondering why my own parents hated me so much. For 6 months, I didn't speak to anyone in my family. I was too ashamed and too busy trying to survive. I was renting a tiny room in a basement apartment. It smelled like mold and the heater didn't work well, but it was mine. Then my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Hello," I answered, wiping a table at the diner. "Grace." The voice was deep and gravelly. It was my grandfather William, my father's father. I hadn't seen Grandpa William in years. My parents rarely visited him. They said he was difficult and old-fashioned. They only went to see him on holidays, and only because he was rich. They wanted to stay in his will. "Hi, Grandpa," I said. I felt a lump in my throat. "Where are you?" he asked. "I went to your parents' house. They said you moved out. They said you wanted to explore the world. But they wouldn't give me your number. I had to hire a private investigator to find you." I almost dropped the phone. You hired an investigator. I knew they were lying, he said. Richard is a bad liar. He sweats when he lies. Grace, meet me for dinner tonight. I'm sending a car. I tried to say no. I was wearing my work uniform. I smelled like grease. But he insisted. That night I sat across from him at a quiet steakhouse. I felt out of place. But Grandpa William didn't care. He looked at me with sharp blue eyes. He looked old, much older than I remembered. His hands shook a little when he held his water glass. Tell me the truth, he said. Why are you living in a basement? So I told him. I told him about the birthday, the suitcase, the business verdict. I told him about the 3 jobs. I told him how they compared me to Daniel. I expected him to tell me I should apologize to my parents. I expected him to say, well, they just want you to be tough. Instead, he reached across the table and took my hand. His skin was dry and paper-thin. They are fools, he said softly. I looked up, surprised. Richard has always been a fool, Grandpa said. He thinks money is character. He thinks noise is strength. He doesn't see you, Grace. I'm not like them, Grandpa, I said. I'm not good at business. I'm not aggressive. Good, he said firmly. Aggression is cheap. True strength is quiet. You have survived, haven't you? You didn't crumble. You are working. You are paying your own way. Do you know how much respect I have for that? He squeezed my hand. Daniel asks me for money once a week, Grandpa said. He comes to my house, drinks my scotch, and asks for a loan for some new idea that will fail in a month. You never asked for a dime. I wanted to, I admitted. I was scared. But you didn't. You figured it out. From that night on, Grandpa William became my secret. We met once a week. I would go to his large, quiet estate on Sundays. We didn't talk about money. We talked about books. We talked about history. We sat in his garden and watched the birds. He was the first person to ask me what I thought about things. What is your opinion on this article, Grace? He would ask. I don't know, Grandpa. Dad always said my opinions were emotional. Your dad is an idiot, he would snap. Tell me what you feel. Feelings are information. Use them. He made me feel smart. He made me feel seen. He saw my sensitivity not as a weakness, but as a superpower. You notice things, he told me once. You notice when I'm tired before I say it. You notice when the gardener is having a bad day. That is perception, Grace. That is valuable. Business isn't just about numbers. It's about people. If you understand people, you understand everything. He offered to pay for my college. I refused. I told him I wanted to do it myself. He smiled then, a real, proud smile. Stubborn, he said, just like me. He never told my parents we were meeting. Let them think what they want, he said. They are too busy looking in the mirror to notice what's happening in the real world. For 4 years, he was my anchor. He was the only family I had. The call came at 3 a.m. It was Grandpa's nurse. Grace, she said, her voice gentle. It's time, you should come. I drove my beat-up Honda to his estate. I ran up the stairs to his bedroom. He was breathing shallowly. He looked very small in the big bed. I sat beside him and held his hand. I'm here, Grandpa, I whispered. He opened his eyes. They were cloudy, but he knew me. My brave girl, he whispered. It was barely a sound. Don't let them break you. I won't, I promised. I've taken care of it, he said. Just wait. He died an hour later. I was holding his hand when his heart stopped. I cried until I couldn't breathe. I felt like the roof had been ripped off my life. He was my safety. He was the only one who loved me. Then the door opened. My parents walked in. Daniel was with them. They were dressed perfectly. My mother had her hair done. My father was wearing a dark suit. They didn't look like people who had rushed over in the middle of the night. They looked like they were arriving for a photo op. Oh, Grace, my mother said. She walked over and tried to hug me. I stiffened. Her perfume was overwhelming. It smelled expensive and cold. We got the call, my father said. He looked at the body of his father. He didn't shed a tear. He looked relieved. Well, he had a long life. It was his time. Daniel was looking around the room. He was looking at the paintings on the walls. He was looking at the antique clock. He was calculating. Did he say anything? Daniel asked me. Before he passed. He said goodbye, I said coldly. Right, Daniel said. Sad day, very sad. The next few days were a blur of fake emotions. The funeral was a spectacle. My parents rented the biggest cathedral in the city. They invited senators, CEOs, and celebrities. They stood at the front, accepting condolences, dabbing at dry eyes with handkerchiefs. We are devastated, I heard my father tell a business partner. My father was my hero. I will do my best to honor his legacy. I stood in the back. I wore a simple black dress. No one spoke to me. My parents didn't introduce me to anyone. To the guests, I was probably just an assistant or a distant cousin. But then something shifted. After the funeral, my parents came up to me. "Grace, honey," my mother said. She put her hand on my arm. She had never touched me so gently in my life. "You must be tired. Why don't you come stay at the main house tonight? We have plenty of room. We can be a family again." I looked at her. I knew exactly what this was. They knew the will reading was tomorrow. They knew Grandpa was worth billions. They didn't know what was in the will, but they wanted to make sure I was close. They wanted to make sure I was managed. If Grandpa left me anything, even a small amount, they wanted to be the ones to control it. They were grooming me. They thought I was still the desperate 18-year-old they threw out. They thought a little bit of fake kindness would make me fall to my knees in gratitude. "I'm fine at my apartment," I said. "Nonsense," my father said, smiling a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "We insist. Family should be together at a time like this. Besides, we have the reading tomorrow. We can all go together in the limo." "We're going to be so rich," Daniel whispered to me, grinning. "I mean, we're going to have so much responsibility. You'll see, Grace. Mom and Dad will take care of you now. You won't have to work those dirty jobs anymore." He said it like he was doing me a favor, like he was offering a stray dog a bone. I looked at them, the three of them, a united front of greed. "Okay," I lied. "I'll come for dinner." I wanted to see it. I wanted to see their faces when they thought they had won. And I wanted to be there when they lost. The attorney's office smelled like old paper and expensive leather. It was a large room in a high-rise building downtown, overlooking the city. My parents, Richard and Alina, sat on one side of the massive mahogany table. Daniel sat next to them. They looked like a team, a hungry, united team. I sat on the other side, alone. Mr. Sterling, Grandpa's personal attorney for 40 years, sat at the head of the table. He was a serious man with gray hair and wire-rimmed glasses. He didn't smile when we walked in. He just nodded at me. "Let's begin," Mr. Sterling said. He opened a thick leather binder. My mother adjusted her pearls. She leaned forward. "We know this is a formality, Mr. Sterling. We know Father intended for Richard to manage the assets. We are ready to sign whatever is necessary to expedite the process." Mr. Sterling looked at her over his glasses. "Mrs. Holloway, please let me read the document." My father tapped his fingers on the table. "Get on with it then." Mr. Sterling began to read. He went through the standard legal words, being of sound mind and body, revoking all prior wills. Then he got to the assets. "The total value of the estate," Mr. Sterling said, pausing to look at a paper, "including real estate, stocks, bonds, and liquid cash, is valued at approximately $3.8 billion. The room went silent. My father's eyes widened. Daniel actually licked his lips. My mother let out a small, breathless sound. It was more money than even they had expected. They were already rich, but this was empire money. This was change-the-world money. "To my son, Richard," Mr. Sterling read. My father straightened his tie. He looked at me with a smug grin. It was a look that said, "See, I told you." "I leave my collection of vintage golf clubs," Mr. Sterling finished. My father froze. "Excuse me, to my daughter-in-law Alina," Mr. Sterling continued, ignoring him. "I leave the antique vase in the foyer which she always admired." My mother blinked. "A vase? To my grandson Daniel," Mr. Sterling read. Daniel sat up straight. "I leave nothing." Daniel's mouth fell open. "What? That's a mistake. That has to be a mistake." "And regarding the remainder of the estate," Mr. Sterling said, his voice becoming louder and clearer. "The entire sum of $3.8 billion, along with all properties, holdings, and intellectual rights, I leave to my granddaughter, Grace Holloway." The silence that followed was heavy. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. I sat perfectly still. I felt my heart hammering against my ribs, but I kept my face calm. I looked at my hands. Then the explosion happened. "This is a joke," my father said. He stood up, his face turning red. "Grace, you're giving almost $4 billion to her." He pointed at me like I was a piece of trash on the floor. "She's a child," my mother cried out. "She works as a janitor. She doesn't know the first thing about wealth management. She'll lose it in a week." "She's unstable," Daniel shouted. Grandpa was senile. He didn't know what he was doing. My father took a deep breath and composed himself. He turned to me. He put on his business face. "Grace," he said, his voice sickly sweet. "Grace, listen to me. Obviously, Grandpa wasn't thinking clearly at the end, but this is fine. We can fix this. He walked around the table and stood behind my chair. He put his hands on my shoulders. His grip was tight, too tight. You are clearly overwhelmed, he said. You can't handle this kind of pressure, sweetheart. It's dangerous. People will try to use you, but don't worry. Mommy and I will step in. We will manage the trust for you. We'll give you a very generous allowance. You can quit your little jobs. You can travel. We'll take the burden off your shoulders. My mother nodded eagerly. Yes, Grace, we'll handle the heavy lifting. You just sign the power of attorney over to your father. It's for your own good. They were doing it again. They were treating me like I was stupid. They thought I would be so grateful for their attention that I would hand over $4 billion just to make them smile. I looked at Mr. Sterling. He was watching me. He was waiting. I don't want you to manage it, I said. My voice was quiet, but it didn't shake. Excuse me, my father said. His smile faltered. I don't want your help, I said, louder this time. I don't need an allowance, it's my money. Grandpa left it to me. You ungrateful little brat, my mother hissed. The mask dropped instantly. We are your parents, you owe us. I owe you nothing, I said. You cut me off, remember. A business verdict. My father's face turned purple. You will sign that paper, Grace, or so help me God, I will bury you in court. I will have you declared mentally incompetent. I will take every cent. Mr. Sterling cleared his throat. The sound was like a gavel striking wood. Mr. Holloway, please sit down, the attorney said. His voice was cold steel. I am talking to my daughter, my father snapped. You are threatening the sole beneficiary, Mr. Sterling said. And you are doing it prematurely. I have not finished reading the will. My father paused. What else is there? Turn the page, Mr. Sterling said to himself, though he knew the words by heart. He looked directly at my parents. William Holloway anticipated this reaction, Mr. Sterling said. He knew you well, Richard. He knew you would try to bully Grace. He knew you would try to take control. So he added a specific set of clauses. They are ironclad. Mr. Sterling began to read again. Clause 4. Independence of the beneficiary. Under no circumstances is the estate to be placed under the management, oversight, or trusteeship of Richard Holloway, Alina Holloway, or Daniel Holloway. Grace is to have full autonomous control immediately. My parents looked like they had been slapped. Clause 5. The interference penalty, Mr. Sterling read. He looked up to make sure they were listening. If Richard, Alina, or Daniel attempt to contest this will, if they attempt to file for guardianship of Grace, or if they attempt to coerce her into signing over assets, they are to be immediately and permanently disinherited from any family trusts previously established. Furthermore, Grace is instructed to dissolve the family charitable foundation, which Richard uses for his public image, and redirect all funds to animal shelters. My father sat down heavily. He looked like he was having a heart attack. The foundation was his pride and joy. It was how he got into all the fancy parties. He can't do that, my father whispered. He can, and he did, Mr. Sterling said. But there is one more thing, a personal letter. He wanted me to read it to you. Mr. Sterling pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was handwritten. I recognized Grandpa's shaky script. Dear Richard and Alina, you are probably angry. You are probably wondering why I chose Grace. You think it is a mistake. It is not. I watched you for years. I watched you ignore the only child you had who possessed a kind heart. I watched you throw her away because she didn't fit your image. You value money more than blood. You value status more than love. I chose Grace not because she is my granddaughter, but because she is a good person. She struggled and you let her. She starved and you ate well. She needed you and you turned your backs. You think she is weak because she is quiet. You are wrong. She is the strongest of you all. She survived your neglect without becoming bitter. That is a miracle. The money is hers. If you want anything from her, you will have to learn to ask. And for the first time in your lives, you will have to accept that she has the power to say no. William. The room was silent for a long time. Daniel was the first to speak. He looked at me, his eyes wide and terrified. Grace, he said. Grace, look, I know I was a jerk sometimes, but we're siblings. You wouldn't really cut me out, right? I have loans. I have the car payments. You'll help me, right? I looked at him. I remembered him laughing while I washed dishes. I remembered him crashing his car and getting a new one while I took the bus. I don't know, Daniel, I said calmly. I'll have to think about it. It might not be a good investment. He flinched. It was the exact phrase our father had used on me 1,000 times. My father stood up. He didn't look at me. He looked at Mr. Sterling. We'll see you in court. I wouldn't recommend it, Mr. Sterling said dryly. They stormed out. My mother was crying not tears of sadness but tears of rage. Daniel followed them like a lost puppy. I stayed in the chair. Mr. Sterling closed the binder. He smiled at me, a genuine, warm smile. "He was very proud of you, Grace," he said. "Now, shall we get to work?" They didn't listen to the warning. Their greed was too strong. 2 weeks later, I was served with a lawsuit. My parents filed a petition claiming I was mentally unfit to manage the estate. They claimed I had undue influence over Grandpa in his final days. They claimed I had manipulated a senile old man. It was a lie, a nasty, public lie. The trial became a spectacle. My parents hired a team of aggressive lawyers. They gave interviews to the press. "We are just concerned for our daughter," my mother told a reporter, wiping away a fake tear. "She has a history of emotional instability. This kind of money is a burden. We just want to protect her." I didn't give interviews. I didn't go on TV. I just listened to Mr. Sterling. "Let them talk," he said. "The truth is in the evidence." The day of the final hearing, the courtroom was packed. My parents sat with their lawyers, looking confident. They thought they were going to win because they always won. They were rich, powerful people. I was just Grace. Their lawyer stood up. He was a loud man who liked to pace around. "Your Honor," he said, "Grace Holloway is a fragile young woman. She has worked menial jobs for years. She has no education in finance. She was estranged from the family. Suddenly, she appears at the grandfather's deathbed and walks away with billions. It is clear manipulation." He called my mother to the stand. She cried. She told the judge I was troubled and confused. Then it was Mr. Sterling's turn. He didn't pace, he stood still. "Your Honor," he said, "the petitioners claim they are motivated by love and concern. I would like to submit evidence A." He projected an email onto the screen in the courtroom. It was from my father to his financial advisor, dated 3 years ago. Subject, the girl, body. "Don't worry about Grace. We cut her off. She's sinking. She'll be begging to come back in a year and then we can control her terms. Focus on Daniel's trust." My father's face went pale. The courtroom murmured. "And evidence B," Mr. Sterling said. It was a log of visitors to Grandpa's estate. "In the last 4 years of William Holloway's life," Mr. Sterling said, "Grace Holloway visited him 208 times. She spent every Sunday with him. She took him to doctor appointments. She read to him." He turned to the jury. "Richard and Alina Holloway visited him 12 times, mostly on holidays, and usually for less than an hour." Mr. Sterling looked at my parents. "This is not a case of a granddaughter manipulating an old man," he said. "This is a case of a granddaughter being the only one who actually loved him. And now the people who ignored him want to steal what he gave her." The judge was a stern woman with sharp eyes. She looked at the evidence. Then she looked at my parents. Her expression was one of pure disgust. "Mr. and Mrs. Holloway," the judge said, "this petition is baseless. It is clear to this court that your father was of sound mind. His instructions are explicit. He anticipated exactly what you are doing today." She leaned forward. "Not only am I dismissing this case," she said, "but I am upholding the interference penalty clause in the will. By filing this frivolous lawsuit, you have triggered your own disinheritance from the family trusts. You have effectively sued yourselves out of your own safety net." My mother gasped. My father looked like he had been punched in the stomach. "The estate belongs to Grace Holloway," the judge ruled. Case closed. I walked out of the courtroom. Reporters were shouting questions. Cameras were flashing. My parents were arguing with their lawyers in the corner, looking panicked. I didn't stop. I walked straight to my car. I didn't feel giddy. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt clean. The truth was out. Everyone knew who they really were. They didn't listen to the warning. Their greed was too strong. 2 weeks later, I was served with a lawsuit. My parents filed a petition claiming I was mentally unfit to manage the estate. They claimed I had undue influence over Grandpa in his final days. They claimed I had manipulated a senile old man. It was a lie, a nasty, public lie. The trial became a spectacle. My parents hired a team of aggressive lawyers. They gave interviews to the press. "We are just concerned for our daughter," my mother told a reporter, wiping away a fake tear. "She has a history of emotional instability. This kind of money is a burden. We just want to protect her." I didn't give interviews. I didn't go on TV. I just listened to Mr. Sterling. "Let them talk," he said. "The truth is in the evidence." The day of the final hearing, the courtroom was packed. My parents sat with their lawyers, looking confident. They thought they were going to win because they always won. They were rich, powerful people. I was just Grace. Their lawyer stood up. He was a loud man who liked to pace around. "Your Honor," he said, "Grace Holloway is a fragile young woman. She has worked menial jobs for years. She has no education in finance. She was estranged from the family. Suddenly, she appears at the grandfather's deathbed and walks away with billions. It is clear manipulation." He called my mother to the stand. She cried. She told the judge I was troubled and confused. Then it was Mr. Sterling's turn. He didn't pace, he stood still. "Your Honor," he said, "the petitioners claim they are motivated by love and concern. I would like to submit evidence A." He projected an email onto the screen in the courtroom. It was from my father to his financial advisor, dated 3 years ago. Subject, the girl, body. "Don't worry about Grace. We cut her off. She's sinking. She'll be begging to come back in a year and then we can control her terms. Focus on Daniel's trust." My father's face went pale. The courtroom murmured. "And evidence B," Mr. Sterling said. It was a log of visitors to Grandpa's estate. "In the last 4 years of William Holloway's life," Mr. Sterling said, "Grace Holloway visited him 208 times. She spent every Sunday with him. She took him to doctor appointments. She read to him." He turned to the jury. "Richard and Alina Holloway visited him 12 times, mostly on holidays, and usually for less than an hour." Mr. Sterling looked at my parents. "This is not a case of a granddaughter manipulating an old man," he said. "This is a case of a granddaughter being the only one who actually loved him. And now the people who ignored him want to steal what he gave her." The judge was a stern woman with sharp eyes. She looked at the evidence. Then she looked at my parents. Her expression was one of pure disgust. "Mr. and Mrs. Holloway," the judge said, "this petition is baseless. It is clear to this court that your father was of sound mind. His instructions are explicit. He anticipated exactly what you are doing today." She leaned forward. "Not only am I dismissing this case," she said, "but I am upholding the interference penalty clause in the will. By filing this frivolous lawsuit, you have triggered your own disinheritance from the family trusts. You have effectively sued yourselves out of your own safety net." My mother gasped. My father looked like he had been punched in the stomach. "The estate belongs to Grace Holloway," the judge ruled. "Case closed." I walked out of the courtroom. Reporters were shouting questions. Cameras were flashing. My parents were arguing with their lawyers in the corner, looking panicked. I didn't stop. I walked straight to my car. I didn't feel giddy. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt clean. The truth was out. Everyone knew who they really were. 6 months later, I found myself driving through my old neighborhood. I didn't plan to go there. I was just driving, enjoying the feel of my car, a safe, reliable SUV that I had bought with my own money. I turned onto the street where I grew up. The houses were huge and imposing. The lawns were perfectly manicured. It all looked so perfect on the outside. I stopped in front of my parents' house. It looked smaller. When I was a child, that house felt like a fortress. It felt like a prison. I used to look at those windows and feel a pit of dread in my stomach, wondering what I had done wrong, wondering why I wasn't enough. Now it was just a pile of bricks. I saw a car in the driveway, my father's car. It was dusty. He used to keep it spotless. I imagined them inside, probably sitting at that long dining table, probably arguing about money, probably blaming everyone but themselves. They were trapped in that house with their bitterness. I rolled down the window. The air smelled the same, like cut grass and sprinklers, but I felt different. I wasn't the girl with the suitcase anymore. I wasn't the victim. Grandpa William didn't just leave me money. The billions were nice, of course. They bought safety. They bought time. But his real gift was the truth. He gave me permission to see my family clearly. He gave me the evidence that I wasn't crazy, I wasn't weak, and I wasn't unlovable. He validated my reality. I realized then that I didn't hate them. Hate takes too much energy. Hate is an attachment. I felt indifference. I didn't want to punish them anymore. Life had already punished them. They had lost the only 2 people who would have loved them for free, me and Grandpa. Now they were alone with their things. I put the car in gear. My phone buzzed. It was an email from the director of the youth shelter we had just opened. "Grace, the new beds arrived. The kids are so happy. Thank you." I smiled, a real smile. I looked at the house one last time. "Goodbye," I whispered. I didn't say it with anger. I said it with relief. I drove away, watching the house shrink in my rearview mirror until it was just a speck, and then it was gone. The road ahead was wide open. The sun was setting, painting the sky in colors of purple and gold. I turned on the radio and sang along to a song I liked. I was free. I finally understood what Grandpa meant. The best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's living a life so full, so happy, and so complete that they simply cease to matter. I didn't take anything from them. I just stopped letting them take from me. And for the first time in my life, I chose peace on my own terms.